If everything moves away from you at the same time, your true transformation begins. There comes a moment in life when it feels like everything is slipping through your fingers. People you trusted grow distant. Opportunities disappear. Plans fall apart. The world that once made sense no longer responds to who you are. And in that moment, fear usually speaks first. It tells you that you are failing, that you are being abandoned, that something has gone terribly wrong. But what if the opposite is true? Carl Jung believed that profound transformation rarely begins in comfort. It begins in disorientation. When the external world withdraws its validation, its noise, its familiar structures, you are forced inward. And this inward movement is not a punishment. It is an initiation. When everything moves away from you, you lose the masks that were shaped by expectation. You are no longer defined by roles, by approval, or by routines that kept you safe but stagnant. The ego resists this fiercely. It wants certainty. It wants to hold on. But the psyche knows something deeper. Growth requires space, and space is often created through loss. In these moments of isolation, the unconscious begins to speak louder. Old patterns surface. Suppressed fears, forgotten desires, unresolved wounds all rise to the surface, not to destroy you, but to be integrated. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, beyond who you were told to be. It feels lonely because it is meant to. No one else can walk this inner terrain for you. And yet, within this solitude lies a quiet power. When nothing external defines you, you begin to discover an internal center. A sense of self that does not depend on circumstances, relationships, or outcomes. This is why transformation often feels like falling apart before it feels like becoming whole. The old structure must dissolve so a new one can emerge. The psyche sheds what no longer aligns with your deeper truth. What leaves your life at this stage was never meant to accompany the person you are becoming. So if you find yourself in a season where everything seems to be moving away from you, do not rush to fill the void. Do not panic. Listen. Observe. Reflect. Something within you is reorganizing itself. Something more authentic is trying to take shape. This is not the end of your path. It is the crossing point. The moment where the outer world steps back so the inner world can step forward. And from that inner ground, a life more aligned, more conscious, and more whole can finally begin. From this inner ground, you begin to see with new eyes. What once felt like rejection reveals itself as redirection. What felt like emptiness becomes clarity. You start to recognize how much of your previous life was built around survival rather than truth, adaptation rather than authenticity. Jung understood that the psyche seeks balance. When you live too long identified with a false self, the version of you shaped by fear, conditioning, or the need to belong, the unconscious intervenes. It dismantles what is misaligned. Relationships fade. Old ambitions lose meaning. The familiar world collapses, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. This is the shadow at work. The parts of you that were ignored now demand attention. The strength you never claimed. The boundaries you never set. The voice you silenced to keep the peace. When everything falls quiet, these aspects finally have space to emerge. And integrating them is what turns suffering into wisdom. Transformation is not loud. It does not announce itself with instant success or visible rewards. It happens quietly, in moments of honest self-confrontation. In the courage to sit with uncertainty. In choosing awareness over distraction. Each time you resist the urge to return to what is familiar but limiting, you strengthen your connection to your true self. Eventually, the world begins to respond again, but differently. Not to who you were, but to who you have become. New relationships appear, grounded in authenticity rather than need. New paths open, aligned with meaning rather than approval. And you realize that what once moved away was making room. So if you are standing in that in-between space right now, trust it. You are not lost. You are being reoriented. This is the sacred pause between an old identity dissolving and a new one taking form. Your true transformation does not begin when everything goes right. It begins when everything familiar falls away, and you finally meet yourself without distractions. And in that meeting with yourself, there is no illusion left to hide behind. No applause. No roles to perform. Only honesty. This is where real strength is born, not the strength to control life, but the strength to face it without denial. Jung warned that what we refuse to confront within ourselves will appear as fate. When you avoid this inner work, life forces it upon you through loss, confusion, and separation. But when you accept the call inward, those same experiences become teachers rather than punishments. The pain gains meaning. The chaos gains structure. At this stage, patience becomes essential. Transformation follows its own rhythm, and the psyche cannot be rushed. Trying to rebuild too quickly often means recreating the same patterns in a different form. True change requires stillness, reflection, and the willingness to remain unfinished for a while. You may notice a strange paradox. Even as your external world feels uncertain, your inner world grows steadier. You begin to trust your intuition more than external opinions. Silence becomes less threatening. Solitude feels less like absence and more like presence. This is how individuation deepens. You are no longer seeking to fit into life. You are allowing life to form around who you truly are. The anxiety of losing control slowly gives way to the confidence of alignment. And one day, often without realizing when it happened, you recognize that you are no longer the same person who feared everything falling apart. You carry a quieter certainty, a grounded sense of direction that does not depend on guarantees. What once felt like abandonment reveals itself as liberation. What once felt like an ending reveals itself as the beginning of a more conscious existence. So if everything is moving away from you right now, stand still. Let it happen. This space is not empty, it is fertile. And within it, your true transformation is already underway. In this fertile space, you begin to understand something essential. Not everything that leaves is a loss. Some things leave because their purpose in your life is complete. Others leave because they were only meant to take you to the edge of who you were, not into who you are becoming. Jung believed that the soul speaks through symbols, through feelings that logic cannot fully explain. The sense of things falling away is one of those symbols. It signals a transition between psychological stages, a death of an old orientation. And every death, when faced consciously, carries the seed of rebirth. This is why resisting this phase creates suffering, while surrendering to it creates meaning. Surrender here does not mean passivity. It means radical honesty. It means asking yourself difficult questions. What am I clinging to out of fear? Who am I when no one is watching? What truth have I been avoiding because it required change? As you answer these questions, you begin to act differently, not impulsively, but deliberately. Your choices become simpler, yet more intentional. You stop chasing what drains you. You stop explaining yourself to those who cannot hear you. Your energy returns because it is no longer scattered. The world may still look quiet from the outside. Progress may not be visible. But internally, something fundamental has shifted. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing yourself. And this is where real freedom begins. From here, whatever enters your life will meet you at a deeper level. Relationships will reflect mutual recognition rather than dependence. Work will feel like expression rather than obligation. Even struggle, when it appears, will feel purposeful instead of meaningless. So trust the distance. Trust the silence. Trust what is leaving. Because when everything moves away from you, it is not life turning against you. It is life clearing the path for the person you were always meant to become. And as the path clears, you may notice how your perception of time begins to change. You are no longer rushing toward the future or clinging to the past. You are learning to inhabit the present with awareness. This presence is not passive, it is attentive, grounded, and quietly powerful. Jung saw consciousness as something that expands through tension. The tension between who you were and who you are becoming creates awareness. If you escape that tension too quickly, you miss the expansion. But if you stay with it, something inside you matures. You develop discernment. You learn to differentiate between impulse and intuition, fear and truth. This is why this phase often feels uncomfortable but necessary. You are shedding unconscious habits and inherited beliefs. You are questioning narratives that once defined your worth. And in doing so, you reclaim authorship over your life. You may still experience doubt. Transformation does not eliminate uncertainty, it changes your relationship to it. Instead of seeing uncertainty as a threat, you begin to see it as openness, as possibility, as space where something new can emerge. Gradually, your actions align more naturally with your inner values. You no longer need to force direction. Decisions become quieter, clearer. You start to sense when something is aligned and when it is not through logic alone, but through a deep internal resonance. This is the mark of integration. The inner and outer worlds begin to correspond. What you think, feel, and do move toward coherence. And from that coherence, confidence grows, not arrogance, but self-trust. So if you are still standing in the aftermath of things falling away, know this: you are not behind. You are not broken. You are in the middle of a psychological rebirth. And when life begins to move toward you again, it will do so with a different quality, one that meets the depth you have earned. Your true transformation is not something you force. It is something you allow, one conscious moment at a time. And with that self-trust, a new kind of courage emerges. Not the courage to fight the world, but the courage to remain authentic even when it would be easier to conform. You begin to understand that alignment is more important than approval, and truth more valuable than comfort. Jung emphasized that becoming whole does not mean becoming perfect. It means embracing contradictions, strength and vulnerability, light and shadow, confidence and doubt. When you stop trying to eliminate parts of yourself and instead integrate them, you experience a deeper sense of peace. You no longer waste energy resisting who you are. This integration changes how you relate to others. You stop seeking completion through external validation. You connect from fullness, not from lack. And because of that, the connections that do form are fewer, but deeper. Quieter, but more real. At this stage, you may notice that old temptations return. Old habits, old relationships, old ways of thinking, testing whether you truly value your growth. These moments are not setbacks. They are thresholds. Invitations to choose consciously rather than react unconsciously. Each time you choose awareness, you reinforce your transformation. Each time you honor your inner truth, you anchor yourself more firmly in who you are becoming. The psyche stabilizes around this new center. And slowly, without forcing it, life begins to reorganize itself around you. Not in dramatic ways, but in subtle, meaningful ones. You find yourself in the right place at the right time. Opportunities arise that resonate instead of exhaust. Conversations feel aligned rather than performative. This is the quiet reward of inner work. So if you are still walking through a period where everything once familiar has fallen away, remember this: you are not being emptied. You are being refined. And what emerges from refinement is not a louder version of yourself, but a truer one, grounded, conscious, and unshaken by the temporary movements of the world. And beyond this stage, something even subtler unfolds. You realize that transformation is not a single event with a clear ending, but an ongoing dialogue with life. Each time you shed an old layer, you gain not certainty, but depth. Not final answers, but better questions. Jung understood that the psyche continues to evolve as long as we remain conscious. Even after great change, new tensions arise, inviting further growth. The difference now is that you no longer fear these moments. You recognize them as signals rather than threats. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this asking of me?" This shift alone changes everything. It turns confusion into curiosity, and struggle into engagement with life itself. At this level, humility replaces the need to prove yourself. You are no longer trying to be seen as something. You are simply being. And paradoxically, this is when your presence becomes most impactful. You begin to act from inner necessity rather than external pressure. Your words carry weight because they are grounded in experience. Your silence carries weight because it is intentional. You are no longer filling space, you are inhabiting it. The world may still be uncertain, and not everything will make sense. But you have learned to stand firmly in the unknown. You trust the process because you have survived its depths before. And so the journey continues, not toward a fixed destination, but toward greater alignment, awareness, and truth. This is not a conclusion. It is continuity. And in this continuity, you come to a final realization. Nothing that truly belongs to you can be lost. What is aligned may change form, but it does not disappear. What was never aligned had to fall away so you could walk forward without distortion. You understand now that solitude was not emptiness, but preparation. Silence was not absence, but instruction. Distance was not rejection, but refinement. Each phase served to bring you closer to yourself. Jung believed that when a person becomes more conscious, life itself responds with greater coherence. Not perfection, not constant ease, but a sense of inner order that remains even when the outer world shifts. From this order, you move differently. You choose with clarity. You speak with intention. You live with depth. You are no longer waiting for life to return to how it was. You would not want it to. What you have gained is something far more valuable than familiarity: self-knowledge. And with self-knowledge comes responsibility. The responsibility to live truthfully, to honor what you have discovered within yourself, and to continue listening when life calls you inward again. So if you ever find yourself in another moment where everything seems to move away, you will recognize it. You will not panic. You will pause. You will remember. Because you know now that these moments are not endings. They are thresholds. And you will step through them consciously, grounded in who you are, and open to who you are still becoming.